Have you ever had a plant when you got it, you were just a bit like, meh, but that plant truly surprised you and fast became one of your favorites? Stick with me and I'll show you 10 of my plants that truly did surprise me. Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. Now apologies for the slightly darker view today, but England and grey skies all morning, so the lights are doing the mostest today, so hopefully things aren't either getting blown out or too dark behind me, but I will bring up things and show you. So as you might be able to guess by the title and the intro of the video, I want to talk today about some plants that I bought over the last, I don't think they're necessarily all this year, no they're not, over the last few years that I've purchased or got in one way or another that really surprised me. That I was a bit meh when I first got them or when I was ordering them and just kind of saying, let's see what the hype is all about. But these plants truly surprised me in the positive way. Now, this week, I'll be bringing out two videos. Which one comes out first, I don't know yet, but there's going to be two videos. One, which is this one, which is plants that surprised me in a positive way. And the second one this week is going to be plants that underwhelmed me. So plants that I had high hopes for, that I then got into my care and just went, is this all that the fuss was all about? I don't understand it, but this is the positive one. The negative one is the other one. So without further ado, let's dive into the first plant. Okay, so the first plant I've just picked up now, and it might not be a surprise for everybody, but this is one that I did a review for recently. I'll show you the new leaf, that's why I'm leaning down. But this is the Anthurium Pedatum. And the Anthurium Pedatum, as you might be able to see, I'm trying to get it in a way that you might be able to see what the foliage looks like. You can see it there. Is a very unusual anthurium. It's not the traditional kind of heart-shaped leaf, it's not the strappy leaves anthuriums. This is one that looks a bit like hands. And in my review, I mentioned the other one that's quite famous, which is the Pedata radiatum. Some people were confused, are going, is that a Pedata radiatum? No, this is a Pedatum. I originally thought they were hybrids, or at least the Pedata radiatum was a hybrid of the Pedatum, but actually they are both species, they're just closely related for obvious reasons in terms of their appearance, as far as I'm aware at least. But yeah, this is one that really did surprise me. As I mentioned in that original video, I got it thinking it was the Pedata radiatum. But then since having it in my care, it has fast become one of my favorites because it's easy to grow. It doesn't seem to be particularly fussy. And I mean, look at those leaves. And I have to do very little. I'm dropping pollen all over the floor. You might be able to hear pings at the bottom. And generally pest-free. This is a great plant, and this truly surprised me because I'm just sitting there going, I don't know what this is going to be like. Is this going to be something I'm going to love? Spoiler, I do. I love this. It's a great, great plant, and I'm so glad I got it in my care. The next plant on my list is a Syngonium, so I'll bring it in so you might be able to see it. And this is one that I think I got as a trade with Lisa, who's one of the co-organizers for the plant swap in London, basically. But I think so. I might be wrong. If Lisa, if you see this and it wasn't you, do tell me that I'm talking rubbish in the comments down below. But this is the Syngonium strawberry ice, I think, or strawberry milk. No, strawberry milk. I bought the strawberry ice recently. I think it's strawberry milk. And I got it, and it was a very small, like one leaf plant or one or two leaf plant, tiny, tiny, tiny. If I've got a picture from my plant care app, I will add it here. But I was a bit like, meh, I'm not a huge fan of Syngoniums, to be fair, although there is a second Syngonium in this list. I should tell you something. And it had some splashiness of pink, but I mean, look at that leaf. It is beautiful, basically. And it was a plant that I really wasn't expecting to kind of enjoy growing. Has it been slow to get going? Yes. But it was also a relatively small and juvenile plant. I know it's not necessarily for everybody. Not everybody likes pink on their plants, and you can see some of the older foliage here. The pink does wash out eventually, basically. But I will be honest, this has been a joy. After it kind of gets going, and when it did get going, it truly surprised me, because I'm just like sitting there going, it's interesting because the pink is kind of not necessarily unreliable, but unpredictable, because I'll show you another leaf there. So that leaf has very little pink on it, and this leaf has a lot of pink on it, and you get everything in between, and it's kind of cool. And again, the brown or the caca princess, the pink princess technically, this I find more interesting. I know it's a paler pink and people wanted that deep pink, and it's a lighter leaf because of that kind of milk aspect of it. So it's got that kind of almost white green behind it, rather than the darker, deeper foliage of the pink princess. The pink princess. It was on my roast. I'll link it up the top in case you haven't seen it. But if you don't ever get any pink on a pink princess, it's just a caca princess. So this one for me has been a lot more consistent. So the people that are looking for kind of pink coloration and something a bit more interesting, so you get this, I find with this, you get that same kind of excitement that you do with the variegated plant. Ooh, what's a new leaf going to be like? Is it going to be this much kind of the pink splashing or not? And yeah, I think this has really, really surprised me. And you might be able to see it is in semi-hydro mix, and it's doing really, really well. It's not just me, all of us in the Northern Hemisphere are coming into the winter months now, and my plants are hating life, as I'm sure there's a lot of other plants that are hating life right now. So it's just like, I think I saw somebody recently, sorry, slight tangent here, saw somebody recently kind of going, let's hope that we have as little casualties as possible this winter. But after growing this many plants for this long, I now know that it's a part of life. The same way that things explode in growth in the summer, in the winter, there's going to be some casualties. It's fine, but it's always interesting, isn't the word? Unnerving to see which ones the casualties are going to be this winter coming. Hopefully this should be fine, though. This is a Syngonium. They tend to be relatively robust. So yeah, surprising Syngonium for me. And I will show you another one. It's quite large, and it's actually on the top shelf that I have up there, and I'll bring it down and show you. Oh, with the big plants today that are very difficult to be in shot. But this is a plant that I never thought I was going to enjoy growing, and I'll show you all the lovely foliage of it. And I get it, this is not for everybody, basically. But I mean, look at that newest leaf. And here as well. So for the eagle-eyed amongst you and who might know what this is the Philodendron Joepii. And it is very cool. I will say something that surprised me, and again, these are the positives that I found for this plant that I didn't realize, because I've got a friend who's a relatively established plant collector, and she has a massive one, basically. And it was on a moss pole, and I'm just like, oh, it's a bit much on a moss pole, and it takes up a lot of space, and it is wide, and that is true. That is still the case. But because I saw it on a moss pole, I assumed it was going to grow super fast, something like the Paraiso verde, the Philodendron Paraiso verde. This isn't super fast, and it does stay relatively compact. Had I have given it a moss pole, might have it been a bit faster? I don't know. If you have got this plant and you've got it on a moss pole, did it grow super fast at height for you, basically? For me, you can see the janky support stick there, but it surprised me. I don't know, I think I wasn't expecting an awful lot for this plant, but actually the leaf shape is so endearing, and it's so cute, basically, because if you look at this one here, basically, they're all a bit unique. They're starting to all look more similar as it matures, but I still find this really interesting, and it literally is one of those things. I can understand why the botanists thought that this was eaten up by pests or by animals. It does really look like that, but for me, in the world that we all live in, the people that at least have large collections, or even people that are kind of getting into houseplants, there's a lot of similar shaped foliage. There's a lot of heart-shaped foliage, and don't get me wrong, I still enjoy some of those plants as well. But when you do truly get a plant that has got unique foliage, to me, it just makes it more interesting. It makes it more exciting to see what that plant is going to look like, and every single leaf is going to be different. And this does tick a lot of those boxes. The other thing that I will say about this, and I have moved this into plant prescription premium soil mix, which I'm really quite enjoying at the moment. This plant has been relatively easy for me, basically. Wait until it kind of more or less dries out, water it, let it be, let it do its thing. It's right at the top, as you might have been able to see when I kind of swinged around. And it does get an awful lot of light. It got an awful lot of light in the summer, and it's fine. It's fine. I mean, yes, the thing that's a bit much about it is quite how wide it gets. But if you do have a space for it and you're kind of considering this plant, I would say go for it. It's quite a fun plant to grow. And after having grown it for a bit, it's, to me, seems really robust. Like the petioles are really, really like turgid, as are the leaves. They are kind of leathery leaves, so there is that to it as well. I've not had an awful lot of pest problems with this. I don't know whether or not this is going to come up on camera. Maybe if I had myself, you might be able to see. If not, I'll see if I can add a little image. The extra floral nectaries on this is real, basically. So there is that to bear in mind. But yeah, the Philodendron Njoy really surprised me. The next one that again surprised me, and I think a few people have seen videos on this, and I will show you, it's here basically, it is my Anthurium warocqueanum. And this is a plant that for a long period of time, and I know people that have been on my channel for a while would have probably seen me slate off this plant, or kind of say that I wasn't too sure, not necessarily slate it off, but kind of say I wasn't too sure about it. I didn't know if it was going to do it for me. But actually, since owning it, I will say this has become a firm favorite, and I kind of get the hype now. I understand why so many people were really, really into this specific Anthurium. Is it still a bit tricky and a bit difficult? And would I not recommend it to people that are just starting off, especially with Anthuriums? Yes, I think in the nicest possible way, earn your stripes before you go for this one, basically. Apologies, I'm getting like random squeaking sounds that are happening, and I'm trying to figure out what it is, but I think I know what it is. Unfortunately, hopefully I'll be able to take it out in editing if it's getting a bit annoying to people, but the conservatory is directly underneath a big lilac tree at this point, and the branches are kind of hitting the roof and squeaking a bit because it is quite windy outside. So I do apologize. There's not much I can do about that at the moment, but hopefully I'll be able to get it out in editing. But yeah, back to the Queen Anthurium. It is quite a fun one. It really, really is. And is it the fastest Anthurium I own? No. Is it one that you need to exercise some patience? Yes, I have done a review. I'll link it at the top there as well. But it is good. And I mean, even for people that are really not into velvety plants or velvety Anthuriums generally, and I'm not one of those people. I'm not one that will gravitate towards velvety plants. I do have a few, but I don't gravitate towards them. Even for me, this is ticking a lot of boxes, and I get it. And I get the fascination that people have to see this size up. And yeah, I think 100% go for that plant if you are thinking about it. Just make sure that you know what you're doing. Because the Anthurium, and it's true what they say, can turn on a dime for you. So bear that in mind. Now, the next one that I want to show is one that again surprised me. I did mention this on another one of my videos, and it is, and I'll pick it up. Let me see if I can pick it up. So it is the Monstera pinnatipartita. And this, again, might not be for everyone. I think Kaylee Ellen recently mentioned this on one of her videos as well. She was one that had it originally in a large form that everybody was seeing. As I mentioned on another one of my videos, this is coming in a bit more on the market at the moment, not in the form that I would like to have it. So again, this was another plant that I got from a plant swap. And I cannot remember who I got this from. If I do, I'll put it at the top there. But really, really happy I got this swap. It was very, very small. And again, I'll see if I can add a picture here so you can see it. But this really, truly has surprised me. And I mean, look at, hopefully that's going to, if I hide my face, can you see all these little roots? And I'll see if I can turn it around this way around. So that might be a bit clearer. Yeah, you can see it there. Very, very cool. And yes, had I have given this a moss pole, and I'm probably going to have to give this a moss pole just so it can kind of level up and start going upwards, it will start getting even bigger leaves. You'll start getting the splits on this. This is a very cool plant. But interestingly enough, again, as I've mentioned previously, it's not the foliage that makes this really interesting. It is the fact that the plant structure itself, for me at least, and I would agree with a lot of people that find this a bit weird, but I like it. It kind of looks a bit alien-like, and it's a bit like a crustacean, a bit like a spider. It kind of branches out in a very, very specific way. Do a quick Google search, find some images. It is very, very cool. But also the other thing I will say about this, it has been super easy to care for. Sorry, I'll show you. It is in semi-hydro. It has been super easy to care for. It has really not had much of an issue. I mean, it is a Monstera. Monstera is a Monstera is a Monstera. It's going to be relatively easy. Not always, I find. I'm looking at all of the obliques at the moment. But yeah, it's been super easy. The texture of the leaves is giving me that kind of Monstera species Peru, which I really, really like. And yeah, this is one that I would say if you're kind of on the fence with this one, maybe consider it. And also, just as a heads up for everybody else who's been watching videos for a while, generally if you see these types of 3D printed pots, basically they are predominantly cache pose. So if you generally see one of these, 99% of the time, what's underneath it in terms of substrate is going to be semi-hydro because it works as cache po, and it's pretty, I think, at least. But yeah, and also shout out to North for the designs of this. And again, I will see if I can link North's shop down below. But the other plants that have surprised me, and I've got a list. I'm trying to find my list so I can tell you which ones they are. Ooh, yes. Let's have a look at some Epipremnum. So if you follow me around the conservatory, you'll be able to see the Epipremnum corner that I have mentioned on previous videos. And on here, hopefully, because this isn't going to be a plant that I'm going to easily be able to lift out, you might be able to see here, as I'm kind of tickling the plant, the Epipremnum Njoy. And this is a plant that is relatively readily available. I've had it for, I would say, 3 or 4 years at this point. It isn't one that you would necessarily find difficult to find, at least here in the UK. And why has this plant surprised me? Very similar to the Mandula pothos. I think some people have kind of said that they might be sports of each other or they're very closely linked. Not entirely sure what that situation is, but this one for me has been easier to grow than the Mandula pothos. The leaves don't get as large, I will say that, but with this, I'm trying the best way to describe this. There's a negative and there's a positive with this one. So the negative is that a lot of the times in the winter when I'm growing it in semi-hydro, for the last 3 years, I think now, it has always pretty much rotted out at some point really quickly. It doesn't like that transitional period, especially in semi-hydro, because in the summer, this is so thirsty that it needs to have a water reservoir. But then that flip happens really quickly, and I don't always manage to catch it. Fingers crossed this year, I think I may have done it, but it remains to be seen. But the positive of that, I will say, with this specific Epipremnum, and it's true for a lot of Epipremnums, but I'm surprised with this one how easily it would rot out. But also, I always have taken loads of cuttings, propagated it. I had one plant originally. I have 6 now after having many winters, because every single cutting that I have taken from that plant has rooted and has grown really fast. So usually what happens with this plant for me is it will start rotting at the beginning of the winter period, but by the end of the winter period, I've propagated it, rooted it, and have a fully sizable, like long plant already by the time that spring and summer turns around. So for me, that's why this plant has been really surprising. It's variegated. Some pothos or some Epipremnum, depending on where you have them as well, and depending on what they are, aren't always necessarily that super fast at rooting in or that super fast at growing out even after they've rooted in. But for me, the Pothos Njoy has surprised me in that respect. It's a very, very cool plant. Now, coming into one that's on this plant shelf here, and I'm going to see if I can find any way of being able to show you this, because it is right behind. I doubt you're going to be able to see it. I don't know if you can. So right back here, and I'm pointing towards... you won't be able to see any of this. Hold on. Can you see something with the moss pole at the back there? The thing that I wanted to show you can be seen up here as well. So you might be able to see this here, and I'll see if I can add some videos here, because that plant is almost impossible to get off the shelf. It has vined everywhere, basically. And that is the thing that surprised me about it. And that's the thing that really did bring me a lot of joy for this plant. Also, just notice the yellow leaf. Ignore it. That is my Philodendron Splendid, but it's one of the oldest leaves, so it's having a moment. Winter. Great fun. But yeah, so this plant now has vined. I'm trying to see where it's vined. It's vined all the way down the shelf and down oh my God, it's gone all the way around to behind me here, basically, and it's now encroaching onto the Epipremnum corner over there, and it's growing that way as well. The vining nature of this plant is insane, and especially for what it is. It is a Rhaphidophora Hongkongensis. So not one that a lot of people will be aware of. The leaves are kind of paddly and green, and literally you can't see it. The like Esmeraldenses are in front of it. But again, as I said, I'll hopefully add some pictures and videos here. Not the most exciting plant to look at, I will say that. However, I have been blown away. So if you're looking for a plant that does vine super easily, has got paddly leaves that are quite thick and quite leathery, that might be one for you. It's not one that comes off very often. I've only ever seen it in the UK sold by Grow Tropicals, and I was able to get it at a relatively decent price, so that's why I snapped one up, because I've been looking at it for a while and I go, ooh, it looks kind of odd, but at the same time kind of very pedestrian and very normal to everything else. But I'm curious to see what it's like, and they brought it down to a decent price, probably because it wasn't shifting as much. It wasn't anything that people would get excited about. I would now, knowing what I know now about this plant. Very, very cool. There is a very cool philodendron, and it is a tiny one, and it is a bit of a dupe for other philodendrons, basically, or one other specific philodendron. And I'll get it from the very bottom of this shelf. So this, and I think I've mentioned this on another one of my videos, if I hide my face so it can focus, is the Philodendron Snowdrift. And this is very cool. This, and as I mentioned on previous videos, again, I keep hearkening to other videos, but some of these things we have had chats about before. This is very much a dupe for the Philodendron Ilsmanii, basically. And it's interesting because I went to a London event quite a few months ago now, basically, and they had a mature Ilsmanii. The person who owned the plant was saying that they struggled a bit with keeping the variegation going. And I just kind of looked at that plant. I had only just bought this plant and just went, oh, I am so glad. Not that I would ever spend the kind of money that the Ilsmanii is asking for at the moment. I'm sure it probably will drop in prices. I'm seeing the Ilsmanii coming into people's collections more frequently these days. So, and there's no hate. If you do have an Ilsmanii and you love it, that's great. Like, as I always say in these videos, it's not the same for everybody, basically. For me, it didn't do very much at all. And I was looking at a relatively established, not fully mature plant yet, but relatively established plant, which is a lot more than this, which is basically, at this point, a baby plant, kind of more like a seedling, essentially. Love this. Absolutely love this, because it's got, you might be able to see the petioles. They've got a bit of a pink blush. You can see some of the foliage comes in with that bit of variegation. Some of them have very large sectoral sections, or kind of very much, the leaf is almost entirely white, and you then start getting some speckles of green coming through. Very cool plant. Really, truly surprised me. Has it been difficult to grow? Not necessarily. This is one of the few times where this is soil in one of these bush pots. But has it been difficult to grow? No. And it has been okay. It doesn't get an awful lot of light. I've got a very weak grow light down below where it grows, and it's still doing okay. It does its thing. It doesn't need an awful lot of watering, probably because it doesn't get that much light. But it's been easy to care for and very cool. Another one of these plants that, because the foliage, and I'm trying to not shake too much, because the foliage can be so different from each of the leaves, really, really cool. Whether or not this reverts back to a green, so you might get an all green leaf and then a variegated leaf, I don't know. I don't think so with this specific philodendron, whilst the Ilsmanii can do that. And the Ilsmanii, from talking to a few people now that have got it, it can be a bit of a prima donna, and it can need just the right conditions to be happy and then start pushing out all of those highly variegated leaves. So there is that to remember with that one. So another plant that truly has surprised me is a piper this time around. And it's a piper that I did another video about edible house plants. And that is the piper sarmentosum, I think it is, sarmentosum. Very, very, very cool plant. Very much roughly textured leaves. They're very thin. There's an awful lot of extra floral nectaries, and hopefully that might come up. You might see that kind of saltiness that you might get on the stems. It's very much a piper. So far, since I've cut it and eaten it, by the way, it tastes amazing. This is a plant that really truly surprised me, not just for the edible factor, but it is a joy to grow. Is it growing a bit slower now? Yeah, it's not getting a huge amount of light, but I did get it at kind of like the end of the growing season. I have high hopes for this next summer. But for the people that were asking in that video, because I did eventually make the meal with this plant, very cool. And I don't know how else to describe it. I took the thumbnail picture for that video and I bit down on one of the leaves, not thinking anything of it. And then the aroma and the taste that came to me, I'm just like, oh, wow. And the best way I can describe it, and I don't know how else to describe this, if you're not kind of Asian descent, basically, and you've been into, I don't know generally what they're called, kind of Asian supermarkets, where you'd go and you'd buy different things if you're making Asian dishes. And usually you go in there, and usually in the produce section, there's loads of smells because there's a lot of aromatics, basically. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And there's usually one or two scents that if you're not used to these kind of ingredients, you're sitting there going, I don't know what that is, but that smells delicious and divine. And nearly every single, at least here in the UK, every single one of those Asian supermarkets that I go into, one of the smells that really does smack you like that, and it's just like, oh my God, this is amazing, is this. And I'm pretty sure I've seen inconsequential kind of cut leaves of this somewhere in the produce section and just go, I don't know what that is, so I'm getting it, I don't know what it is, basically. Very, very, very cool. Not one that comes up very often, I will say that. I think I've only ever seen it once when Grow Tropical had it. Very cool. Very, very cool plant. And again, how many plants can you literally, because essentially what you do with this, at least the recipe that I did, which I think was a Vietnamese or Indonesian recipe, I can't remember now, is these leaves can get quite large and paddly. And for the people that have had maybe Greek cuisine or even Turkish cuisine, if you've ever had dolmades or dolmas, where it's kind of vine leaves wrapped in mincemeat and rice or just rice, similar kind of thing with this. You take these leaves and you wrap them usually in some form of mince kind of mixture and you put them on the barbecue. OMG, so amazing. Truly surprised me. Very, very cool plant. And coming into the final plant on this list, this little beauty here, heart-shaped leaves. So this is the other Syngonium that I was talking about. This, and I'll show you all the plant, is the Syngonium chiapense or chiapense. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce this, but very, very, very cool. And I think the thing with this is, barring the fact that this has got to be hands down one of the fastest growing Syngonium that I have owned or ever have owned, basically, because I'm pretty much getting a new leaf at least once a month, if not 2 leaves a month. And we're coming into the slow period now, so I do need to already, this is outgrown. It's very small moss pole. It has rooted into the moss pole beautifully. I need to chop this up, propagate it, and make an even bushier plant, basically, and just basically control it a bit because the growth is insane. This is all about the texture of these leaves, and I don't know how else to describe it other than rubber. I think that is pretty much the only description, and it is very much a tactile plant. Very cool. And you know me, if you've been here for a while, you know I like the fuzzy plants or stuff that have got nice kind of like sensations to them, basically, when you touch them. Oh. And I know the me from the video that I'm saying that when you touch plants a lot, it slows them down. This one, if the manner touching is slowing this plant down, I dread to think if I didn't touch it, what it would grow like. But very, very cool plant and very underrated. There is a variegated version of this, and I wasn't too sure about it because it does go for quite a bit of money. But having owned this now, I'd be really, really keen to add the variegated form of this plant to my collection to see what it's like to grow. But it's still a bit pricey for me. I think it's the triple digits from what I can see for small kind of propagates, rooted cuttings. So I'm going to have to wait a bit, and hopefully that might come down in price. I don't know if it will, because this isn't a plant that everybody's looking for. Oh, really surprised me in a positive way. Very, very cool plant. If you're on the fence on this one, I'd say don't be on the fence anymore. Pick it up and see what yeah, like if what I was saying ticks the boxes for you, go and pick this up. It's very cool. I think that is literally all the plants. I'm looking at my list here that I wanted to talk about. So the Rhaphidophora Hongkongensis, stunning plant, might look a bit basic, but boy does it vine. Oh, insane. Then the Anthurium Pedatum with those kind of leaf-like, hand-like leaves. What's the word? Oh, Sunday, I need another coffee. Very, very cool. Super easy Anthurium as well. Really surprised me. I'm looking down because I've got my list. The strawberry milk Syngonium. Very cool if you want something with a bit of pink splashiness. That it kind of gives vibes of variegated plants. So if you're one of those people that runs and you love your variegated plants and you run to see what the new leaves pattern is going to be like, that's definitely going to be one that is going to tick that box for you. Then the UPI, I mean the Philodendron UPI, not for everybody. I get it. I know everybody else has said this. I do agree. It's very unusual leaf shape, but if you like unusual leaf shapes, that is definitely one that you might want to consider adding to your collection at some point. It is wide. You saw that. There's no two ways around it. So you need the space for it. Then we've got the stunning Queen Anthurium behind me, which surprised even me. Didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. Did I have 3 failures before I got this one and this one kind of settled for me? Yes. Am I getting cocky enough to think that this won't die a death really quickly on me? No. So beautiful plant, get the hype, understand it, will add my voice to the voice of like hundreds of people that love this plant. I will still say the same thing that everybody else says. Be careful with it. That's the only thing. Then the Monstera pinnatipartita, which isn't one that a lot of people necessarily would want, but if you like the Monstera Spa Peru, the textured leaves, you like kind of plants that have odd shapes themselves. It's kind of like an odd shape video, basically, in terms of plants. You can see I got a type. But yeah, that is definitely one that you're going to like. The Njoy, for being the ultimate resurrection plant for me, at least in my experience. Like, it could rot out relatively quickly, but boy oh boy does it propagate really fast and grow really quickly after that as well. Then the chiapense, the Syngonium chiapense, with those rubbery leaves. I don't think I've ever experienced any other houseplant with that kind of texture in the leaves. Then the Piper sarmentosum. The taste of that, I will caveat that and say that when I cooked it in my kitchen, the kitchen smelled for days of that. It didn't smell bad. It smelled of that plant, basically, and it cooking. And so did the rest of the house for a few days. So think if you ever cook a curry, how that scent can linger for a few days in your house. I will say that. It's an interesting one that I do want to try on the barbecue next summer when it's out and about and it's less of a chance of that lingering smell. And I think a lot of the traditional recipes that you might get for it kind of get you to do that, or you eat the leaves raw and in salads and stuff like that, so you don't get that lingering scent. But yeah, there is that, I will say. And then the Philodendron Snowdrift, the ultimate Philodendron Ilsmanii dupe, but in my humblest of opinions, much more interesting. So yeah, did any of these surprise you? Have you got any of these? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I miss any? Let us all know in the comments down below and let's have that conversation. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.